Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Everything Has Changed, Nothing Has Changed, Creating the New Normal. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard Crossland, Managing Director of AAG, the Alfred Ashley Group. AAG are a leading supplier of telephony and IT services, predominantly in the UK. I'm joined today here by Karen Cove and Francis Matthews from Q Learning. Q Learning are an organisational development, training and coaching company with clients such as the NSPCC, T-Mobile, Constrain, many pharmaceutical companies and district councils. Q Learning have been clients of AAG for almost 2 decades, and I had the opportunity to attend one of their courses a number of years ago around NLP. The course had a massive impact not just on my working life, but also on my personal life. Hence, when I pondered the idea of how we return to normality beyond the pandemic, whilst we can assist from a technical point of view, I reached out to Q Learning so that they may be able to share their insights on other aspects of business and life. So I'm delighted to have Karen and Francis here today to provoke your thoughts and conversations to help you think about how you might adapt over the coming months.
Thank you so much, Richard, and it's good to be with you all. Like many of you, we have been so pleased in recent weeks to have Richard and his team giving us the support we've needed to be able to keep Q Learning doing what we do and supporting our clients. And so it's really lovely to be able to work with Richard on this today. I'm Karen Cove, I'm the MD of Q Learning, and I've been with Q Learning from pretty much the beginning, over 20 years ago. We get involved in leadership and management, training and development, organisational change and development, and facilitating organisations through partnerships or alliances, joint ventures. And that's across the public and private sectors. And for me, at least, over the last few years, that's meant many an hour in airports, in hotels, in client buildings across Europe. So when at the end of February, the pandemic really hit in Europe, that changed. And it's given me, working with Francis and other colleagues, some time to pause and reflect on what it is we do and how we do it and how we can best support our clients, both in the immediate term, but also longer term, what this means for Q Learning and our new normal as the new future unfolds. And we want to share this thinking with you. So no doubt last Sunday, when we were all listening to the Prime Minister talking about the gradual lifting of the restrictions, I'm sure there were probably many questions going through your mind and things that you were thinking you needed to be doing and working out the answers to. Our outcome for this session is to give you a framework that can support you in doing that thinking. Maybe some new questions, different questions that can help you to influence the new normal that you want to create around you for your business and the people in your business with you. And I don't know what your routine has looked like during the lockdown days, but I'm going to hand over to Francis, my colleague at this point, to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her routine.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. So I don't know if it's my new normal, but my current normal is starting the day, each day, doing PE with Joe Wicks, along with my 9-year-old son, and about consistently more than 200,000 other households across the world. And at the time of recording from today, it's now week 9 of lockdown. And over this time, his YouTube channel has had 60 million views, and it's generated £334,000 for the NHS Charities Together Fund. So by joining Joe Wicks, I'm also helping raise money for the NHS, as well as feeling great each day and improving my health. And it's hard to predict what might be ahead for Joe Wicks and how revenue will be generated in the future for many of us. So we hope that this webinar will give you a practical framework for thinking about the future when we're faced with urgent, complex 21st century challenges. So Karen is now going to talk to you about why now.
Yes, why now? We called this "Everything Has Changed and Yet Nothing Has Changed," and that's a phrase I have heard so many times over the years in different organisations. Whether it's been following major restructures, whether it was following the economy collapse in 2008, following 9/11, and many other times when on one hand people are telling me, golly, everything has changed, and yet they're also saying that nothing has changed. The same leaders are leading the same people in the same way, and decisions are being made in the same way. So everything has changed, and yet nothing has changed. And when I think about individuals who might have a well-earned break over perhaps the Christmas holidays or a summer holiday, and develop new habits and well-being routines that they promise themselves that they're going to keep hold of, and yet within days or weeks following the return to normal, many of those disappear, and nothing really changes. I, for one, and when I think about some of the things we've seen on the news and the conversations I've been involved in, I, for one, really hope that good will come from the hardship and suffering that has been around us all for many, many, many weeks. There have been lots of amazing stories and examples, and we've got some pictures on the slide, the dolphins and swans returning to the waterways of Venice, families just having some really special times together. And then, as Francis has just talked about, Joe Wicks and people becoming fitter and enjoying the sort of fresh air in ways maybe we don't normally have the time to do. So there have been many examples of such positive side effects to lockdown. But these don't just stick. Old habits die hard. And so what we do need to do is think about how can we take this opportunity, this moment of opportunity that we've been given. It needs intentionality. We might be lucky, good things might stay around, but if we really want to create the new normal we want, if we want to have influence in our new normal, it needs intentional leadership. And that's a quality we see in the very best leaders we get to work with. Intentional leadership, emotionally intelligent leaders are what lead to sustainable change. I'm a resident living just south of Oxford, so I saw recently this, just last week, this quote in an article in the local newspaper, and the city had recorded reduction in nitrogen oxide levels, 59% reduction being recorded, and that's the recording the best quality air since the days of horse and cart. And that's been amazing. But what we've got here is an example of the intentionality of the leadership at Oxford City Council to use that as a platform, a start point, a boost to what is possible now, and actually making happen within Oxford City area some means in order to continue the quality of air and the transport and pedestrian friendly environments that we've been wanting for many, many years. And this is an example of intentional leadership. So now, as leaders, I'm sure you're thinking about, what are the accidental things that have happened in your business, and which of those do you want to preserve going forward? And the decisions and actions that you take now with the people around you will set a precedent for the culture in your organisations. changing patterns and habits is hard enough when we're one person on our own, let alone in a business of many, many people. And especially in unpredictable times, it really is about one step at a time. And so what we want to show you now is a model that can help us in thinking about this one step at a time. So here we are. Everybody loves a 2x2 model, and this one's one I really love right now. Developed by a man called Ian Burbridge in the RSA, and we wanted to offer this you as a framework for how to help you think through how you might move forward in these unpredictable times. So what you can see on the vertical axis, we've got the during a crisis. What is it we've stopped and what have we started during the crisis? So in Q Learning, as I've said to you already, I've stopped my face-to-face work. I've stopped jumping on planes. I've stopped being in hotels, and I've stopped my face-to-face work. We also stopped our normal cancellation terms. It just didn't feel right. And so we chose to stop our normal cancellation terms. I've started, and Francis has started, and my colleagues have started, we started making contact with more active, more intentional contact with partners and suppliers and people around us in similar businesses, and having conversations and sharing how we can help or support each other through the times ahead, and sharing knowledge and learning and generally helping each other out. On the horizontal axis, what we have is post-crisis, or maybe this is the post-lockdown. So we might be emerging from this now. And again, we've got what we have stopped and what we've started. So for me, I have, since the lockdown has started to be eased, I've stopped working from Zoom calls from my kitchen table, and I've started to create this office space that I'm recording from now. So we've got this 2x2 model, and that sets up some really interesting things that we might want to discuss with and brainstorm with the people around us in our businesses in each quadrant. So in what we stopped in the crisis, and we stopped since the crisis has ended, I mean, what is it we want to let go of? So for me, for years, I have refused to engage in virtual delivery. Francis has done it for years, but I really have not been very enthusiastic about it at all. Actually, I need to let go of that now, because over recent months, Francis and I have had many a conversation. We've experimented, we've developed new ideas, new concepts. And actually, if I'm able to actually move from letting go to amplify in the top right, it makes you think about what might come of it, what new opportunities there might be for us within the business. Another example, as I alluded to earlier, is the way we've moved closer to our partners, been vulnerable together, helped, supported each other. And this webinar is an example of that. I've reached out a number of times to Richard for his support, and we've been able to develop this idea of running this webinar together. And of course, it will take intentional behaviour, but what would it be like if these sort of opportunities, we chose to continue these opportunities going forward? Processes and bureaucracies. If we think about how the Nightingale hospitals came about, and hopefully how things are moving forward with a vaccine, a lot of the normal red tape and bureaucracies were stopped during the crisis. And wouldn't it be wonderful if our government leaders were really being intentional in thinking about what good governance do we need going forward, and what red tape and bureaucracy can we just stop, even moving forwards, because amazing things have happened because much of that has been lifted. And how true of that is in your organisations? What has been the normal red tape that you've chosen to forget or just waive, bend? And what has that made possible? What has the impact of that been? And your processes, your products in your business, what during the crisis have you perhaps focused more clearly on? What have you stopped altogether? And what new products and services might you have developed? And it could be that there were some ideas that were ideas you'd had for many, many years, but they were a bit blue sky, a bit wacky. And maybe they're more potential for them to fly now. Maybe they're some things for you to consider. In some cases, the biggest shift might well have been in an attitude or a mindset. I think that was true for me with the working virtually. But I've heard a lot of conversations of people, as people started to work from home at the beginning of the crisis, people saying, I've just got to trust that my teams, my people will get on and do what I need them to do. I need to focus on the outcomes that they're delivering, not how many hours they've been sat at a desk. And as a result of that, the focus and the focus on delivering what is needed and pulling together to support whatever is needed in the business. There have been so many great stories. So I wonder what might be true for you to build on that going forward. And finally, well-being, and whether Frances continues to do her exercises every morning or not, I don't know. But what about well-being for you and your team? I was working with someone recently and I said to him, what's the impact been for you of working from home? And he said, I've become a better father. And I just think, that's an opportunity. I wonder what would have to be true for him as restrictions get lifted and he's having to work away from home to still keep that he's gained over these last few months. So there will be things we want to end from the top left or restart from the top right, but mostly our focus here is on that bit running through the middle, what we might want to let go of and amplify. So I hope this can support you in your thinking about what you might want to be intentional about as you start to create the new normal you want. And so I'm now going to hand back to Frances, who's going to introduce you to a model with some great questions to ask, particularly in times when the future is uncertain and we have limited ability to control what is happening around us.
Thank you, Karen. So it's not a 2x2 model, but it is a really simple 3-line model, which gives you, I think, a powerful and innovative way to think further about the future, as Karen says, in this time of uncertainty. It's called the 3 Horizons model, and it's by Bill Sharp. His book is in the bottom right-hand corner there, and can help with questions to stimulate interesting and enrich the conversations that you might have with your people in the business. So helping to identify innovators, accelerators that are going to take us into our best future, especially useful, as we've said earlier, at a time where there's so little certainty. So roadmaps, we've heard quite a bit about roadmaps. These can be really unreliable when there is this lack of certainty, and scenario planning can be really challenging when there's that lower level of agency that we might have in our landscape, in our environment. So what you can create is a pathway, taking one step at a time, and each step needs to be lived and experienced before the next step becomes clear. But what we can do and what we can be clear about is, as Karen has said, is about our intentionality. So if we look at this model, you'll see the x-axis is time along the bottom, and the y-axis is level of energy. It's the patterns of what we do each day. H1, business as usual, This is the pattern that our life is being lived right now. We need these certainties. We do need certainties in our life. We need to know that we can go to the shops with our cards, and use contactless payment, and the money will be taken straight out of our account. It's reliable. We now trust this. So this is what we call managerial thinking, and it's that feeling of being responsible, keeping things going. The change in H1, in Horizon 1, can be because of something in the landscape that has forced that change, such as a global pandemic, and you hit a buffer, and things can change overnight. Or the change can be brought about by a vision, which has then been created within, and that has created the change. So that has led then to H3, which is this visionary thinking. It's about thinking beyond the emerging future. So we won't have the evidence that this is what's going to happen, but we might have a belief in the success of this vision. And at this point, at H3, what you can do is start looking for pockets of examples of what might be ahead. And if you look for them hard enough, you might be able to find those pockets of emerging future. And then you've got H2, this disruptive innovation. So this is an entrepreneurial mindset. You can see as an entrepreneur that H1 is no longer the future. So we're going to look for new opportunities to try and find something which can fail, but it can also succeed. And this disruptive innovation is the bridge across both from H1 to H3. So going back to my example of Joe Wicks, he has been putting content on YouTube for many years. So that's part of his business as usual. He's got a lot of recipe books that he's got. The 5th one's just come out. So he has got a team of people who are working on the courses that he runs and the books, and yet he also has this this new way of bringing revenue in from this PE with Joe Wicks, which has really taken off as a result of the as a result of the pandemic and the lockdown. But he's always had a vision of what, so he's always had that intention to be, I mean, he used to think of it as he wanted to be the nation's PE teacher, and it's changed. He's become international as a result of what's changed. So it's really taken off, and time will tell of what happens beyond lockdown, and whether this continues to grow or whether it changes into something else. So I'm going to present to you now a number of questions that you can ask yourself. So getting your business together, getting your teams together, whether it's virtually, and just asking these questions, and it will lead to some really interesting conversations. And if we change the mindsets from managerial or entrepreneurial or visionary, and we see them as perspectives, we can step into each different perspective and see what comes out, see what new ideas might emerge. So the first question is A. So what is business as usual? What is it that we do and we need to keep doing? And B, where did that, well, how did we get here? Often by looking back into the past, we can really learn and then start to reflect, predict what's ahead. C, what is declining? Why is it declining? Get really clear about that. And then D, is there anything that we really need to keep? So that you can see how this really builds on Karen's model from earlier of the things that we want to let go and the things that we want to keep. And then E is what's the future? What's our vision that we want to bring about? F is where you start thinking about where the seeds are that are visible right now that we need to nurture and help to grow and emerge. And again, it's learning from where those seeds have come from, because that might inform you of things that will help you in order to grow those seeds and develop them. And then H is, so how can we make sure these seeds can be spread far and wide, or internationally across the world, in Joe Wicks's case. So I is about, so what else is out there? What's the competition? That other people have got similar ideas, and can we collaborate with them? Can we work with them in some way? So looking at what else is out there. J, what's being disruptive? What are the things that might create that bridge from H1 to H3? K again is looking back and reflecting on what the roots are of those disruptions. And L, so what do you need to do to ensure that disruption, that innovation is scaled up and then can spread beyond? So there are a number of questions there that I hope you can take away and use and in order to create some really interesting conversations. So I hope you like that model. I'm now going to pass back to Karen, who's going to leave you with one more question.
Yes, one more question to reflect on. So for too many people, this pandemic has brought tragedy and hardship. And there have also been many unexpected positives. So how will you be intentional now with the conversations you have and the decisions you make to enable you to invest in the opportunity that this has presented to you? Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you, Richard, for inviting us to be part of this with you. We hope this has been helpful and given you some food for thought.
Karen and Francis, thank you very much. Some real great positives and tools to ponder the future, and thank you. If you'd like to make contact with Karen or Francis, then please go to their website, www.qlearning.com, or via the links sent with the webinar to discuss any of these items you've seen or explore some of the Q Learning services. Please feel free to reach out to them. AAG are here to support you creating your new normal. That might be assisting with new office layouts, moving IT and telephony equipment back to the office, or some of your staff and departments might continue working from home and may want to upgrade their equipment. This webinar today has been brought to you with Microsoft Teams and is an example of the new tools that become part of our lives. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you've enjoyed this thought-provoking webinar and it gives you the advantages in your business going forward and in more general life. I look forward to talking to you soon, but goodbye for now.